Good morning, and welcome to our September 5th, 2017 Public Safety Briefing. We have a few topics for discussion today, one of which is going to be school bus safety as we begin the new school year, as well as the identification of our robbery suspect, or how was reported over the weekend, a stabbing, which in fact was a robbery, as well as the firefighter injury that we experienced over the weekend. So we'll start with some school bus safety this morning. As school starts for our students in Wicomico County, the school buses are also going to be out picking up our students and transporting them to and from their residence and to school as well. We ask you that you exercise extreme patience as these buses make frequent stops throughout our neighborhood as they transport our students to and from school. As you see the bus's yellow flashing lights, we ask that you prepare your vehicle to stop prior to these students getting on the bus. As the red lights and the stop signs are activated on these school buses, you are required to stop your vehicle and allow these students to get onto the bus safely. You're also going to allow the students to cross the street safely by stopping your vehicle. Some students will be walking to school. Some students are going to be riding their bicycles to school. We ask that you use extreme caution as students use crosswalks and or walk along roads where there's no sidewalks provided to get to school. Keep in mind that some students have not walked to school before, and this is going to be their first time, whether they're walking or whether they're riding their bicycles. Use caution as you're traveling the roadways in the mornings as well as in the afternoon hours. We ask that you be aware of these students that are at school bus stops, as they may inadvertently step into the roadway. Use caution as you pass these school bus stops. To keep our students safe as the school year starts and progresses, we ask that you plan your travel time accordingly. Leave early or leave earlier from what you were leaving before, so you'll not become impatient and make poor driving decisions. Keep in mind our speed camera locations. You can go to our website to see exactly where they are and the fines that are associated with those speed cameras. Those are there to reduce the speed of vehicles in our school zones. If you are caught failing to stop for a school bus, you will be fined and ticketed. The fine for the first violation, or a violation not involving an accident, is $570 with 3 points on your license. If your violation causes an accident, the fine will be increased to $610 and 3 points on your license. So please use caution when passing school buses or passing school bus stops where kids are waiting to go to school. I'd like to go into the robberies that were reported over the weekend. Starting on Friday, September 1st, at approximately 5 p.m., officers and detectives responded to 720 South Salisbury Boulevard, which is the Family Dollar. They met with a 28-year-old female clerk who stated she was waiting on customers in the business as the suspect had entered the business. When the suspect entered the business, not wearing a mask, he began to walk around the store and act as though he was shopping. The clerk continued to wait on customers at the register when the suspect ran around the counter and immediately approached the clerk who was working. The suspect produced a knife and began slashing motions at the clerk while the clerk was trying to defend herself. The suspect reached into the till and grabbed an undisclosed amount of U.S. currency and ultimately fled the store on foot. The suspect was able to obtain an undisclosed amount of U.S. currency, as I stated, prior to leaving the store. The clerk was transported to the hospital where she was treated for non-life-threatening injuries as a result of this incident. Detectives and officers arrived on the scene and began canvassing the area of the flight path for additional evidence. detectives did recover additional evidence related to this incident. Wicomico County Sheriff's Office K-9 responded and assisted us with the track. The track did not reveal additional evidence as a result of this incident. We did immediately obtain closed-circuit television still images from the Family Dollar, in which we released immediately upon receiving them. As the detectives were investigating this incident, we received another call at approximately 7:30 p.m. to respond to the Tiger Mart, which is located at 501 Spring Hill Avenue, for a report of another armed robbery at that location. Upon arrival, the officers as well as detectives met with the clerk, who indicated she was in the business working when she was approached by a suspect from behind. The suspect threatened the clerk with a handgun. However, he never produced the handgun. The suspect then reached into an already open register till and removed an undisclosed amount of U.S. currency prior to fleeing the store on foot. Again, the officers and detectives canvassed that area immediately after the report, however, did not locate the suspect, nor did they locate additional evidence related to this incident. The clerk was not injured during the incident, and at approximately 7:20 p.m., shortly after they responded to the Tiger Mart, we received a call to respond to the 400 block of Camden Court for a report of a burglary and a theft. The officers immediately went with the resident of this particular residence, and she had indicated upon returning to her house, she noticed that her house had been burglarized and several items within her residence had been stolen. The officers continued to interview the victim as it related to the burglary and theft that they were investigating, and determined that 43-year-old Stephen Darnell Nichols, Jr. of Salisbury, Maryland, was responsible for the theft and burglary that occurred at that residence. The officers, as well as detectives, continued to interview this victim and ultimately learned that Mr. Nichols was also the same person responsible for the 2 armed robberies that had occurred just hours prior to this incident being reported. That same evening, detectives received an arrest warrant for Mr. Nichols, charging him with the Family Dollar robbery as well as the Tiger Mart robbery. Charges on the theft as well as the burglary are still pending from the 400 block of Camden Court. We are still working to take Nichols into custody at this time. At this point, I would ask if you have any questions related to the robberies as well as the burglary as they were reported over the weekend, or school bus safety if you have those questions.
Could you tell me again where that Family Dollar was located?
Sure, 720 South Salisbury Boulevard.
And then the Tiger Mart, did I hear it right? Was it in the 100 block of Spring Hill Avenue?
That would be the 500 block, 501 specifically.
Does Mr. Nichols, do we know if he has a criminal history?
At this time, we are working on that. I'm not going to release that information at this time. Okay, as we transition to Mayor Day and Chief Hoppus, we would like to send our thoughts and prayers to the firefighter who was injured over the weekend and wish him a speedy recovery as he goes through this process. Mayor Day and Chief Hoppus will now address that injury. Thank
you. All right, thank you, Captain Kaiser. Good morning. Hello, Salisbury. I'm here today because we are going to address the incident that we had on September 3rd, which is this Sunday at 11:45 a.m., which resulted in the injury of one of our firefighters, one of our volunteer firefighters. So a group of 3 firefighters conducting non-emergency operations utilizing Salisbury Fire Department apparatus, experienced an incident which ultimately resulted in injuries experienced by a firefighter. Chief Hoppus is going to come up in a few minutes and talk about the details of what that firefighter is going through and his recovery. But I want to just share a few things just about my experience from Sunday. Upon learning of the incident, the chief, Deputy Chief Darren Scott, and myself drove to Shock Trauma. We got to spend time with the family of the firefighter, of the young firefighter. We were, I think, amazed at how incredibly well the family was doing, given the concerns. Your reaction, your gut reaction when you hear about an injury involving a heavy piece of equipment and a human is that you're scared to death. Like imagining that there's no way it can turn out good. And we've been blessed, and the firefighter and his family have been blessed that his recovery is going much better than I would have expected. I didn't know what to think, but it's been a blessing that we got to spend time with the family. We know that the firefighter has been awake, and he never lost consciousness, which is both good and bad. I'm sure bad in that it was painful, good in that his vitals remained good, and he had the benefit of having a paramedic, one of our incredibly talented officers, who got to fly with him on Trooper 4 and hold his hand and be with him the entire way. Also got to sit in the hospital room with him throughout. So he was never without another Salisbury Fire Department employee by his side, which I think was a blessing. What we've got now is an issue that is going to be handled by workers' compensation. Our volunteers are essentially our employees, our people. So we take care of them. They are provided with workers' compensation, so he will be well taken care of in that regard. He's obviously got access to the best medical care in America at University of Maryland Medical Center, Shock Trauma. And now we have representatives from the Salisbury Fire Department standing vigil with him every day, 24/7, up there in Baltimore. We're providing that support. I want to thank the volunteers, especially Station 16 volunteers right now who are providing that staffing. And we want to ask for, more than anything else, prayers for our brother and prayers for his family. If there is more that can occur in terms of support, we will let you know. At this time, we're just asking for prayers and well wishes. And the chief is going to come up and talk about the details that we are able to release at this time, and details on his condition that we are able to release at this time. So Chief Rick Hoppus, if you'll come forward, please, and address the cameras.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, I'm here today to talk about an unfortunate event that transpired at approximately 11:45 hours on Sunday morning. Members of the Salisbury Fire Department were conducting a non-operational event in the neighborhood of Sleepy Hollow. During that event, a member of the Salisbury Fire Department was injured in an incident involving a Salisbury Fire Department apparatus. Fortunately, on-scene Salisbury Fire Department personnel were able to render immediate medical care and to alert for additional equipment and personnel to come to the scene to take care of our injured brother. An off-duty, in addition to our personnel, an off-duty Anne Arundel County firefighter happened to be in the neighborhood and on the scene almost as the event occurred, stopped and rendered emergency medical care to our fallen brother as well. And we express our deepest gratitude for the professional care that he rendered in our time of need. Once on the scene, our department personnel, our firefighter paramedics, took over patient care, and the commanding officer in charge, in accordance to Maryland medical protocol, called for a medical evacuation and referral to Shock Trauma via the Maryland State Police Aviation Division, Trooper 4. Trooper 4 arrived on the scene in a very quick fashion, and we were able to have our member transferred to the medical care of the Maryland State police officers and paramedics that were on Trooper 4, and they transferred our member to the helicopter for rapid transport to Shock Trauma. What we know is that our member suffered multiple injuries, but as the mayor has indicated, and what we know at this point is that fortunately no significant internal injuries have occurred, no broken bones, but injuries that will require some things to happen in the future. What we can tell you is that our firefighter has undergone multiple medical procedures at this point, including one surgery. And as we speak at this conference, it's our understanding that he's undergoing a second surgery with the possibility of at least another surgery tomorrow for some work that needs to be done for him and his health. What we know is when the incident occurred, as the mayor said, he was alert and oriented, was in a lot of pain. But yesterday, after following his surgery on Sunday evening, yesterday afternoon it was reported to us by his family that he was alert and in good spirits, still in a lot of pain, and they were trying to manage that pain through medicines in preparation for today's surgery. He was in good spirits. Members of the department were able to visit with him and found him to be, as I said, in good spirits, and we were grateful for that report. Our firefighter has been a member of the department since 2014, where he started his career with us as a cadet and just recently became a full operational member of the Salisbury Fire Department. Just by way of review of what has transpired over this last 36 hours, I think it is, and we're pretty close, maybe even 48 at this point, is we asked for and have received assistance from the Salisbury Police Department, who is conducting a full investigation to the incident, and we have very willingly turned over all of our information so that a full and unbiased investigation can take place. With the assistance of the Wycombe County Sheriff's Department, whose accident reconstruction team was also on scene and spent multiple hours there doing their work, which we're grateful for their support, because SPD doesn't have that capability at this time. So we're grateful for the assistance of the Wycombe County Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Lewis was gracious enough to offer all resources that he had at his disposal in our time of need. Just by way of information, we have reached out to the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Administration as well to report the incident, and we'll continue to work with MOSH through this entire event. In closing, I'd like to tell you that we extend our deepest appreciation to all of our allied agencies, our firefighting agencies and other police agencies that have offered assistance and prayers as we have had to deal with this unfortunate incident. We extend, most importantly, our prayers to our injured brother and to his family. They have and will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers throughout this series of events that will have to unfold in the near future. But after consulting with the family, and we are not releasing the name of our injured brother out of respect for their privacy, and we would ask for cooperation from all agencies to do the same. So with that, I close my remarks and would entertain any questions that might come.
Well, one of the questions that I have is, and I know that you have involved the Wycomico County Sheriff's in reconstructing the accident, but I think the question on pretty much everyone's mind is what led to this firefighter being essentially run over by an engine. Are there any protocols in place when laying down these hydrant markers that should have prevented this from happening?
All right, just to repeat the question for those who may not have heard it, is the question was in brief, and if I miss it, then I can be corrected, that what events precipitated the accident. And unfortunately at this time, I'm not going to be able to release that. We are still waiting on the results of the investigation. Once those results are available to us, we'll make them public to make sure that everybody is fully briefed on exactly what happened.
And then the second part of my question was whether or not there are any protocols in place. I know, you guys are putting your lives on the line every day, but this seems like it was not really a life-threatening, or it shouldn't have been a life-threatening situation. Do you have some kind of safety protocols in place to prevent this kind of thing from happening that maybe were not followed?
The short answer to your question is yes. Following the outcome of the investigation, we will certainly address all of those items as needed. We'll create additional training as needed, just to make sure that this unfortunate event never gets repeated.
And then one last question, not to hoard all the questions here, but the firefighter who was actually driving the engine, is he or she still on the job, or are they on administrative leave?
That's a great question. The question was if the driver of the apparatus is still on the job. The answer is no. He's been placed on administrative leave. He will be up for reevaluation when he is cleared by his medical practitioners to release him for full duty. Obviously, it's a very emotional and traumatic event, and because of that, we want to make sure that his health is guarded as well.
So I have to follow up with that. So are we just talking about mentally healthy to go back to the job, or are we talking about he had a health condition?
No.
Okay.
So thanks for the follow-up question. The question was, was it a medical condition? The answer is no. We're talking about his emotional and mental health. Yes.
A couple things I think I would add to that. First of all, after any accident, and we have a lot of pieces of equipment on the road every single day. We have accidents with our field operations department, our waterworks department, housing and community development, police, fire. Anytime there's an accident, the very first action with respect to the driver, assuming they don't need any medical care immediately, is they go and get a drug and alcohol screen, and that happened immediately following. I don't know the results of that. I don't know that we have results of that test. There's nothing to indicate that there would be any reason to be concerned about that. However, that's protocol. That's something we do. Secondly, knowing the driver, and like I know any of my employees, this is a person who is struggling with what's happened. I think it's painful and scary, and they feel guilt and probably guilt beyond what they should, and that is something that has to be dealt with a counselor before he can ever come back onto the job. So we got to make sure he's healthy and okay, and once that happens, we'll get him back to work. Now that being said, I've had the misfortune of being part of having to be in an investigative role in several military accidents. I know what the process is. I know how these things work. The way we're going to handle it, obviously, is we're going to separate the policy investigation from the criminal investigation. There is an ongoing criminal investigation, and I say criminal, I mean we're talking about a traffic citation at worst, and that's happening. And then the second piece of that is investigating from a policy standpoint. Do we have all the right protocols in place? And so I'll be appointing an independent investigator to determine that. Again, we have no reason to think that policy was violated, but we're going to investigate to figure it out, and to see what new policies can be implemented to ensure that no one's injured. This is what happens after every accident. We try to determine what can be done differently, and if there is something, we'll implement it, and if there isn't, we recognize that accidents do happen. So that being said, we've notified the fire department has notified MOSH. The Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Administration. We understand that because the injuries because there were no internal injuries, because there was no loss of hearing or eyesight, because there was no loss of limbs, there will not be a MOSH investigation. They won't do it, so we have to do it. Because the injuries were not more severe, they will not conduct an investigation. So we'll handle it, and we want to make sure that we learn from every incident. Any other questions? Yes.
I did have one. I think everyone has sort of noticed, and it took some explanation as to what these blue markers are, which tells me that this is a relatively new procedure here and probably abroad. Are you all reaching out to see if anyone else is having sort of irregularities or incidents across the nation? Because I can't imagine we're the only people trying to enhance our infrastructure with these markers and these forms of signage.
Good question. So the question is about the procedures for installing the blue markers and whether or not anyone else is having these issues. I don't know the answer to that at this time, but what I'll tell you I've learned just in the last few weeks is that we're not unique. In fact, on the lower shore, these are very common. All of Ocean City, West Ocean City, Hebron, they're everywhere. So this was just one small district that had not that we had not installed them yet. They're everywhere else in our district. They're all over, but this one small area they had not been installed yet, and so we had volunteers who were willing to go do that work. Off of their time and really contribute themselves to this, and they do that for a variety of reasons: equipment care, maintenance, you name it. I mean, our volunteers step up to do all sorts of great work, even our cadets. So we really appreciate them. And at this time, again, I don't think it's relative to the work they were conducting, but how it was being conducted. That's what we'll look into.
I have another question.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I just wanted to go back to the part about the gentleman being on administrative leave and just make sure that I understand. So he's on administrative leave pending medical clearance from his own doctor. I guess what
I don't know
wondering
whose
is
care
that-
he's under.
Okay. I guess what I'm wondering is that you did mention that you have a policy investigation, and then you also have like a criminal investigation as well. So is his administrative leave going to be extended based on the results of either of those investigations?
I think it's a little preliminary or presumptuous for us to find out or talk about how long his administrative leave will be until we get the results of all of the investigations and look at how that's going. But his medical treatment plan will be what his physicians, his personal physicians deem it to be, and then we will have our department physicians also sign off on it.
And Chief, if I could add, as Sheriff Lewis said yesterday, I think it's important not to get into assumptions about there being administrative leave based on something he did wrong. That is not the case. That is not happening. This is purely about his health, and that's all we've got at this point. There's not been a traffic citation. There's an investigation ongoing. And a traffic citation wouldn't necessarily lead to being placed on administrative leave either. I'm not sure what the results of receiving a traffic citation on duty would be. Probably depends on department policy. I'd have to check each of our department's policies to see that. I'm sure the chief has dealt with that before, so I'll let him speak to that. But again, this is about the mental health of the driver based on the fact that he was involved in an accident involving an injury with one of his people, his teammates, and we've just got to make sure he's healthy before he can get back to service.
I get it. When's the last time you had a firefighter injured on the job?
Firefighters get injured on the job regularly, but to this extent, it's the first under my administration as the fire chief.
And how long? I'm here, so
Since 2009.
Since 2009.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
No more.
Again, we simply ask for your prayers and your thoughts to be with the family and with our injured brother as they go through this unfortunate event, and we pray for a speedy recovery. Thank you very much.